Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kadija and today we're making Key Wat. It's an Ethiopian beef stew that takes hours and hours to make, but it's totally worth making. This dish takes patience and a lot of time. So the recipes I've seen online say it takes about 8 to 12 hours to make. But I really don't have a lot of time. I have a few hours here and there today. I have to take my child to the doctor's office and I have to reorganize my garage. So I tried to clear up my schedule as much as possible so that I can make this recipe, but I don't have 12 hours. It is 12:30 p.m. right now, so we're gonna try to make this and get it ready for dinner by 7 p.m. We'll see how we can do that. I am going to use the Instant Pot so I can cut down some of that time, and because I have to step away for some of that time. I've made this sauce before, but I did not stick to the recipe because I was still experimenting, and I am still experimenting, and this is my 5th time trying to experiment on this dish. So I am going to try to stick to the guidelines as much as possible and to the recipe as much as possible. I have about 7 pounds of onions, and this will reduce. It looks like a lot of onions, but it will reduce. And one tip I'll give you: when you cut onions, cut it under a faucet. So when you peel the onion and you go to cut it in half, try to cut it in a bowl of water or under a faucet so that it will temper some of those gases that makes you tear up. One of the main ingredients for this dish is berbere, which is a spice blend that you can purchase from any Ethiopian Eritrean grocery store. So what we will do, you set it up on saute. I'm gonna set it on medium right now, but when I go to cover the pot, I'm gonna lower it so that I won't burn the onions. That's what I'll do. All right, hang in there. Let's make some Key Wat.
I'm going to start by running the onions through the food processor, because you're either supposed to fine chop it or run it through the processor. And this is the consistency I am looking for.
So this is what it looks like right now. As you can see, that's normal. I didn't put any oil, and I haven't stirred it since I started. So you're supposed to stir it constantly.
Here's the thing about using the Instant Pot today. It's convenient. I get to take it out on the patio if I wanted to, because that was my initial plan. When you cook that much onions and you put such strong spices on it, the house will smell. So my thought was, I'll take it outside. I also get to see the temperature, I get to control it, I turn it off, turn it on whenever I wanted to. But there are some downsides for using the Instant Pot in this instance in particular. The amount of onions I used is too much for the size of Instant Pot and the shape of the container I'm using. You will need a wide rim container or a cooking pot to cook the onions, to sweat them, and to fry them. I should have added the oils in the first stage or right when I put them in, but I didn't. In my mind, I was thinking, I'll sweat the onions down, I'll have them dry up a little bit, I'm gonna add some salt to help the process, and then once I get to that level, I'll add the vegetable oil and I will let it cook further then. I didn't want to use as much oil as I've seen in other recipes, just because I really don't like my food to be so oily, but I end up using almost the same amount anyways. Let's make the finishing spice blend for this recipe. This is the Mekelesha spice blend, which is an Ethiopian spice blend. I'm using a recipe posted by the Gourmet Gourmet, and I'm going to put the link to everything in the description below. I used some whole spices, which is what I had in my cabinet, and replaced whatever I don't have with the same thing that I had already, but black peppers. I didn't have whole black peppers, so I replaced it with powdered black peppers, and I blended everything. When I went to the Ethiopian store/restaurant to purchase the berbere, the owner told me to not replace the Ethiopian cardamom with regular cardamom. She said they taste different and they smell different. So I didn't try to substitute or replace the cardamom with regular cardamom, even though I have plenty of the regular cardamom, because I wanted to experiment, but I also wanted to stick as much as possible to the recipe. When I was researching this dish, I noticed that there were a lot of variations for the ginger, garlic, berbere, and Mekelesha spice blends. It depends on the family, your preference, and how much you're making. There was a lot of variation. So the measurements you see in here are tailored to what I thought were appropriate for the amount of onions I was cooking. Today's recipe calls for spiced Ethiopian butter, but because I don't have it, I replaced it with Kerrygold Irish butter because it has a high fat content. At the 2.5 hour mark, I had to leave the house for the doctor's appointment. So I set up the Instant Pot on the warm function, low for 3.5 hours. I didn't want it to cook while I'm gone. The mixture has been sticking to the pan because it's not a non-stick pan, and I didn't want to burn the whole thing. So I was gone for about 5 hours. This is not going to be ready for dinner for tonight. So what I decided to do is to put it on slow cook for 1 hour and just take my time cooking it. I also went ahead and added more berbere and more butter. I added berbere because I wanted it to be a little spicier than what it was. At this point it was medium heat to upper medium heat, but I wanted it to be spicier because I also wanted to preserve some of this mixture and put it in the freezer so that I can use it in the future as a base sauce. So I added more berbere to make it more concentrated. I added more butter because it still needed a lot of more dimension, and at some point I also added oil. I set the Instant Pot on the stew setting for 4 hours on very low heat. I stopped cooking after 4 hours. This brought my total cooking time for the day to 7 hours. And I resumed cooking the next day for another 7 hours. It sounds like it's a lot of time, but you have to consider that I cooked most of the time on low setting because the sauce kept sticking to the pan and I had to empty it about 3 times and clean up the mess on the bottom so that I won't end up with a burnt flavor in the food and chunks of burnt sauce in the food. I don't think I'll be using the Instant Pot the next time I make this dish just because it was a lot of work for me to make sure that I don't burn this, even though I did burn it a couple of times, and I had to empty the pot and clean it and start again. And I wanted to share all of this with you just because I know some people might have wondered if they can use the Instant Pot for this or for any other dishes that uses base sauces similar to this. I personally didn't have a good luck with it, even though my result wasn't as bad at the end, but I would have preferred to not have cooked it for 2 days, 7 hours each day, and it still end up with the same result that someone would have cooked it in just 8 hours for 1 day. I wanted to show you how my experience went and how this experiment went. I learned by doing. This is how I'm learning to try to make this dish as authentic as possible. So after I finished making my base sauce, I put away the amount I wanted to store, which in this case ended up being 4 cups, and I put it in the freezer. And I had about 3 cups left in the Instant Pot, to which I added chicken broth, meat, potato, and a little more of the finishing spices. I added more water and I let it cook for about 1.5 hours on medium heat. I did not cover the pot with its own lid. I used a different lid just so that I can check on it constantly and make sure that I don't burn it. It took 2 days for me to create this dish, but the results were phenomenal. I loved it. My family enjoyed it for dinner that same night. I had my sister over and she loved it. It was a little on the spicy side, but that's how I liked it. If you didn't want it to be as spicy, don't add as much berbere. We served it with a side of guac and a cabbage curry satay. These 2 side dishes paired up really well with the dish as they complemented the heat and the spices that used in the dish. I hope you guys learned something new from me today, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified when I post my next video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.